Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again for another episode of Way of the Warrior. My name is Trevor Martin, and I'm the founder of RMF Coaching. And if you're familiar with Way of the Warrior, and you kind of know how this goes, right? As I was going through some of my coaching and hearing individuals and their stories, I started to think, wow, you got to share that. You've got to be able to, other people have to be able to hear that, hear the stories that, that I was being able to witness. So I started Way of the Warrior. So that kind of evolved, excuse me, into me going out into social media and finding warriors that are kind of pushing back against the darkness, right? They're standing up for the light and for goodness and kindness, both in their personal and professional lives. So once again, I have found another one of those warriors, and her name is Kat Nichols. Kat, I got to tell you, thank you very much for joining me today. Like I'm super excited about this.
I'm excited too. Like we were just saying, it has taken a while. We've courted
Sure.
within the last 6 months several times.
Oh
Oh, how about
yeah.
this weekend, this day, and it just never worked. But we made it work
We
today.
sure did. We sure did. And that's, I will say sometimes I get it that like sometimes that can be tedious, right? The conversation, trying to grab somebody like, oh, hey, how about now? Oh, that won't work. Well, how about now? And then as time goes by, you start to go, I don't know. And that never happened here. And I'm going to kind of lead off with this. One of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you today, one of the reasons why I really wanted you to be on Way of the Warrior is how passionate you are about your faith. Now, a lot of people in my inner circle, a lot of people who I talk to, who know me, and if you've seen some of my posts, I'm not very quiet about it. That's something, faith is something that I've struggled with. The passion that you have for your faith really stood out to the point where as I was looking at your posts and obviously wanting to schedule Way of the Warrior with you, I'm like, I have got to know what makes her so passionate. I mean, she fully believes 100% everything that she's saying. There is no doubt there. At least there doesn't appear to be. How you present, everything that that you believe in. So I'm going to ask, I do want to know a little bit more about, a little bit more about that faith, but I'm going to ask, can you rewind a little bit? Have you ever always been so steadfast in your faith? Where did that start? How did it start? And how has it impacted your journey, overcoming obstacles, slaying giants, if you will, as you're moving forward, you're right into present day?
Okay. Well, I am a cradle Catholic. That's where you are bred into the Catholicism, into a Catholic family. Both of my parents were Catholic. My mother wasn't. She didn't start off that way, but my father introduced her to the faith and brought her in, and very. It's in the Bible. The man leads the household, and she follows suit. And as a result, he put her on a pedestal, just like the Bible says. And so that's really where the introduction started. Funny
Okay.
enough, through Catholicism, you have these different rites, right? You have baptism, you have first communion, then you have confirmation. There's these different rites of passage, right? As you're growing in your faith. When you're baptized, you have godparents, right? Just like, you'll hear, oh, I have a godparent, this, that, or the other. Well, for Catholics, like you have somebody that at the very beginning takes you through faith, someone you can depend on, somebody that can lead you in faith, any questions you might have. Funny enough, my parents picked a nun to be one of my godparents. And then
Ah,
my godfather was a piano music instructor for a Catholic school here in Houston. So on both ends, at the very beginning, it's like, okay, you're gonna be deep rooted in faith, and this is where you're gonna be. And then my parents were very active in the church way early on, part of, they were marriage counselors, they taught children, Bible,
mm,
all that kind of stuff. And we actually had lots of fathers and sisters, meaning the nuns, were in our house 24/7. Birthday parties, just Friday nights, Sundays after church. I mean, there were always these holy people that were in our household from a very early age. And so I want to say somewhere down the line that kind of stuck with me. There was obviously those times where, you go through high school, you go through college, there's this huge disconnect,
yep.
secular world you you've you've got to figure out who you are for yourself. You can't let your parents tell you what to believe, what to think, what to do. And so you kind of go through this like obstacle course. You're like, okay, here's a detour. I can follow what my parents told me, or I can figure it out for myself. And of course, my mom always tells me, why do you always have to do things the hard way, Catherine? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, just that's how I am. I've always been a very impulsive person. And so back in my college days, I detoured and I detoured quite heavily. The drinking, I didn't really do drugs or anything like that. I've never done them, but drinking and, when you open the
Yeah.
door to those kind of things, other temptations come and you just derail very, very quickly. And then, gosh, after college, probably a few years after that, my cousin passed away, and then there was just this, death after death, and then cancer came, and then my father had illness, and then faith just creeps back in. God's kind of knocking at your door like, okay, you've got another detour coming up. What do you want to do? You want to keep on this trajectory, or do you want to do something that kind of can kick you back in gear where I originally thought you were going to be? And so, I mean, he always gives us that choice, what do you want to do? Do you want to choose good? Do you want to choose evil? And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Life is so hard when you make bad decisions. There's not one person that's out there that can sit there and say, I've never made a poor decision in my life. I'd love to speak to that person.
Rich.
Even people of faith. Like I listened to a whole bunch of podcasts about people that, fathers, sisters, anybody that's been, it doesn't even have to be Catholicism. And they too have struggled, with not only their faith, but also, am I making the right decision? Or they make a poor decision and it just derails them. So, I mean, but yeah, in a snapshot, that's kind of where I am today. And obviously, you're going to get into the nuances of why I've done and said and are where I am today. But yeah, that gives you a good snapshot.
No, I appreciate the snapshot. And there's one thing that I was smiling as you were saying because you've said it actually in a response or a comment to one of my posts, like, hey, God's knocking at your door, hey, are you, are you there? Are you paying attention? I do. So I absolutely love that statement. I want to go back, rewind a little bit. You made a comment about drinking, and I can, several people can relate to that struggle, whether it be, whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, things like that, those different vices that pull, right? And that once you open that door, it's a landslide. Rather can be rather quick, right? So how how did you get past, at some point in time, you have to make the conscious decision, no, I will not drink anymore, or no, I'm not going to do this, or maybe it's not, no, I'm not going to drink anymore, but I've been too far this way. I need to pare it back. I need to bring it back to here, whether it be it's controllable or something that you understand is not going to be damaging to both your mental and your physical state. How did you get to what did you do? What process? What led you to the no, this is it? And then how did you actually decide, or how did you actually bring up the discipline to do that?
Well, I drank all through college. Got pretty bad when my cousin did pass away. He was a Marine and he got shot down. And he was very close to my family. And it's actually how I met my husband. That was one of his best friends. But when someone dies, there's this weird ritual that you feel like you have to drink to commemorate that person's memory. Like I've seen it across the board with so many
Mhm.
different people. Someone dies, oh, let's go to a bar. Let's talk about all the good times, all the memories. And then before you know it, you're like, you're doing this quite a bit. And the year that he passed was 2007. And I kid you not, 2007, 2008 was a hard year because all you're doing is drinking. And like we just disclosed, drinking leads to a variety of different temptations. You're just cognitively, you're not there. You're making some
Preach.
very bad decisions. And so that's essentially what happened with myself. I was making bad decision after bad decision. And finally, I was just like, what am I doing with my life right now? I'm working and I just graduated and I was supposed to be trying to better myself, but now I've pigeonholed myself and I've got myself in quite a bit of mess. So what do I need to do to fix this? And so I started to taper back a little bit, get more into fitness, running quite a bit, weightlifting, all that kind of stuff. Um, and then got married in 2010, had my son in 2013. So it takes years, but
Yeah.
I'm sure like you'll know your kids, that's a whole different ball game. You have to have mental clarity. You have to be physically fit to not only chase these little, hungry monsters all around the house, but to maintain the energy, also lead by example. All of a sudden, it's just like, okay, I've got eyes on me. I've got to not only be there for them, but I've got to make sure that I'm practicing what what I'm preaching essentially. And so that's really what kicked it off. 2013, I like to toot my horn. It was the last time I was actually drunk. That was the last time I was drunk. I don't like it. I don't like the feeling that it brings you. I
Yeah.
don't like, oh gosh, there's a level of just I'm going to use the word silliness that comes, and just an impairment that comes when you're drinking or doing any kind of recreational activity, that's illegal. You're doing something and you're starting to say stuff, vomit in the mouth that you wouldn't typically say. You're acting out in a way you wouldn't typically say. You don't have any control over your body, over your mind, over your speech. And so 2013, I'm like, we're done. We're not doing that anymore. I've got my son, going to take care of that. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, I feel better about myself. And then I started to kind of get more into faith, a little bit dabbling, always went to church on Sundays, like I was told to. And then what really hit was my daughter, she was born in 2015. Cancer came very, very soon after. And then that's just like you bottom out. You're like, what now do I do? I have to depend on myself, which when you're going through something like that, to depend on yourself for something that could essentially take you out, you can't depend on yourself because you didn't create yourself. So who created you? Well, God created me. And if he can create me, can't he take care of me? Okay, so let's go back to faith. And so that's when I really started to dial back. That was a very hard time. Lots of emotions, but you talk about way of the warrior. And when you're going through some kind of illness like that, whatever it may be, or a death or something like that, you look at the people around you and the people that you really care about, and you're like, I have a chance right now to be a warrior and to buckle down for them because this world isn't about me. This world is about the people that God has surrounded me with. So for you, it's your kids, it's your wife, it's your family. Those are the people that this world is about for you. This is no different than for me. So when cancer came, I saw how my husband fell. I saw how my parents
Mm.
were like, what is happening? My in-laws, my sisters, my kids, everybody around me that cared about me, like they were struggling. And I was like,
Oh,
well,
I bet.
I don't want them to struggle. I don't want them to sit there and be like, I I gotta lift her up right now. I can't see her, let her see me cry. I can't let her see me get mad. And I'm like, that's not what this is about. I want you to know I'm gonna be okay. And so that's where faith started. Like I started praying more, reading the Bible more, listening to gospel, everything and anything. People were praying left and right, every prayer group you can think of from all types of denominations. People that don't even pray were like, I'm praying for you. And I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take anything I can get.
Yeah,
Right.
I might
Right.
throw
I had
one
a
up. Actually, throw up too. Yeah.
absolutely. If you have any kind of genuine care or kindness, it doesn't really matter what you believe, as long as you believe that there is something that can make you feel better, I'll take it. You know?
Yeah. There's a couple, but well, actually, there's more than a couple things. There's so many things I could segue off. I'm just sitting here listening. This is exactly the type of episode I love because I'm just all of a sudden something in your head goes, "Hey, Trevor, you should talk now," because I'm so immersed in what you're saying. What was funny is the emotional reaction. Well, it's not funny, but the emotional reaction that I had when you were telling your story, you said, yeah, and then I had you say 2017, you had your daughter?
2015, and then
2015.
later I found out I had cancer.
So 20, so as you're telling the story, like, and then I had my daughter and I lit up because I'm thinking of Aubrey, I'm thinking of Charlie, right? My daughters, and I'm like, oh, like I lit up, and then you're like, and then cancer hit, and I immediately went from like to,
Yeah.
right? Because to have so much joy, like you just said a couple months after, right? Like after you have your little bundle of joy, and then something that could potentially lead to the end of you is there. And so to have that moment of joy, that huge high, and then right, there are people, there's a lot of people that don't make it through something like that, Kat. And there's a lot of people that they can't, they don't have the mental, I don't know, the discipline, the mental toughness, the whatever that inner power, that something that says, hey, you need to keep moving forward. You need to find something, and you will find something that's going to help you get through this. And for you, it sounds like it was that faith. So I'm going to take the time to ask you, and this is a little bit offbeat here, but it's because of, well, yeah, it's just because of how you're telling your story. Um, you were talking about vices and you're talking about drinking. And I think a vice of mine has of so long for so long has been anger, an internal rage that started well when I was really really young, uh, and that rage grew and grew and grew as I got older, and it was what made me disassociate from my faith to the point where I let you said that God's knocking, and I'm like, well, those doors are barred by anger. Like no way anybody's getting through. And I hear, so we shared, Riley, I shared that Riley had sent me this, right? And I hear you talk about how much strength and how much power you got from your faith to you come through what you were battling with cancer. I'm thinking, man, there's power there. What advice would you give to somebody like myself regarding that faith when they hold on so much to that and they're just through therapy, through shadow work, through anything, they just can't seem to let all of it go. Not to put you on the spot.
I have these conversations with family members all the time. I have them with my sisters, I have them with my mom, with my husband, with my kids. Um, Anger is a hard thing because we're emotional beings, right? We were
Preach.
created to feel. And obviously, we're made to have these emotions. So they're okay to have these emotions, but it's when you let them fester that they can become a barrier and they do inhibit your growth. Your growth as a person, your growth is into what God knew you were going to be. And I go back to the Bible. Those that know Christianity know there are the disciples. One very famous one, Apostle Peter, very stubborn. He was the rock. Um, and it's funny because you're sitting here and you're telling your story, and all I can think of is, wow, Trevor's very reminiscent of Peter the Rock because he was very stubborn. In every movie, every show that he's depicted on, he's depicted as angry. He's depicted as he's just mad. He's mad at the life he was given. He's mad that he has to go out and fish and he gets nothing, so he can't provide for his family. He has to pay taxes to Matthew. He's just mad. And then Jesus comes and he's like, "Why are you so mad? Why are you so angry?" Like, and then you have to sit there and think, well, why is Peter angry? He he has a boat. He's a step ahead of other people. He has an occupation. He's healthy. You start to go through all the list of, okay, well, if I'm upset, but then I'm sitting here and I'm discounting all the blessings that God's already given me because I'm upset, then I'm not like other people. God's given you so much, correct? He's given
Correct.
you beautiful girls, your wife. He's given you this platform. I look at you, Trevor, and I see what you're doing and I hear what you're doing, and I'm drawn to you. And I always like to say that I'm drawn to people because there's a divine reason as to why. I think God's talking to you and he's knocking at your door because he sees something great that you can do through this platform, through your voice, through that emotional anger that you have. Think about it this way. You can help all the people that are so mad and pissed off at the world and the choices that they've made to get themselves there. Or maybe they didn't make those choices. Maybe their family made bad choices and they, by default, or friends, were put in a circumstance. But if you can sit there and harness your anger and use it for good, maybe that's the calling God has for you. So you can see life isn't supposed to be just anger and upset and just pissed off all the time. There's other beautiful things that are around there. What would you tell your daughters, about being
Exactly.
I mean, you have to go
Exactly.
back to a childlike mind, in order to understand it for ourselves. We'd like to say that adults don't have to really learn anything. All those little things that we teach kids, oh, we've already learned that. But then you kind of have to relearn it as you're parenting all over again. You forget just how far off the beaten path you've gone. So you got to rewire your brain, which is a good thing. It makes you wonder, oh, maybe that's why we have kids to keep us to keep us on the straight and narrow, right?
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, I want to acknowledge, thank you very much for the kind words that you've said about me um and what I'm doing here. And I will definitely take the comparison to Peter. He was actually my favorite, or is, excuse me. Isn't Peter, if I remember correctly, isn't Peter the one that lops off the guard's ear and Jesus says, "Put your sword away"? Is it Peter that when Peter's getting arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas gives him the kiss and they come in, right? And Peter strikes and Jesus goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. Calm
And
down."
then he regenerates the ear.
Regenerates the ear. But he's like, but Peter strikes out in anger and like takes off the ear. Once again, right, going to that leap of uh that leap of anger. And in the scriptures also, Peter is weak enough to deny Jesus, deny that he knew the Lord, that he knew him, that, "Oh, I don't know who you're talking about." I believe it does, I think, three times. And to the point that he makes Jesus so upset that I believe Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." Like, get behind me. And I feel, having heard you say that, that, look, anger stunts your growth. Anger makes you, well, puts up barriers to where, you could be here, but you're here because you're just sitting in that anger. And to your point, Jesus directly looked at Peter and said, "Behind me. Yeah, I'm not going to look at you. Get, you're what you are right now and what you're being right now. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to deal with it. Get." And that's huge. There's conversations that, and I've said this before, but there's conversations that I believe in our life that we're meant to have, that we're supposed to have. And so I'm very, very grateful that this actually finally worked out, that I'm able to talk with you about this. I have a lot, like I'm totally going to go back through here on the notes and re-listen to this because there's so much here. When you speak, Kat, when you speak about your God and your faith and the things that you're going through, it's almost like, it's not almost, it's as you continue to talk, you get more, your power increases. You can watch you in your countenance, in your eyes, like how you are. And I think that that is absolutely amazing. And I want to focus on this current state right now, where you're at and what you're doing in your world. Before we hit record, you were talking about you'd gotten these microphones, and I believe you're going to be looking at a podcast, or trying to launch, or not trying, but launching one of your own. Can you elaborate on that and what's behind that?
Ooh. So just like you, we try to figure out what's our purpose. And I
Preach.
try to do it from what do I want in life? Okay, what do I want in life? I've always wanted to write. So I want to be a writer, right? And you start to think, well, what is secular world wants? Secular world wants us to have money, have fame, have success. but that's not necessarily what God wants us to have, right? So I have to sit there and think, okay, well, what is something divine? How can I use my platform to make him shine and make me diminish? Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make him shine and make us little. Um, and so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what are the topics that I genuinely love to talk about? I absolutely love talking about faith. I love spiritual warfare. You were talking earlier about the Apostle Peter, about denying, about anger, and all of that is good. That's evil. That's spiritual warfare, which is every single day, every minute of every single day. And that is so relevant to life, past life, modern life, future life. Like if we can have dialogues about, okay, well, you're going through something hard right now. Okay, let's dumb it down. When you get down to it, that's spiritual warfare. Whatever you're dealing with your life, the devil's knocking at your door every which way, 24/7. He's using the people around you. He's using media. He's using politics. He's using everything to get into your head to knock you down because he doesn't want you to experience that divine purpose that God has for you. And so, to get back to your question, I am in the process of launching a podcast. It'll be with my little sister, Maggie Bernard. She's on LinkedIn a little bit. She's a worker bee, so it's hard to get her, but we talk every day. And one of our favorite conversations to have is spiritual warfare, but we also want to dive into work, work ethic. We're hard workers. And we were taught that with integrity. We love people, we love networking because she's in sales. So we like having conversations with people. We like asking questions, politics, government, our world. So it's going to derive kind of the same situation you have. Um, but we want to, it's called brass tacks. We want to get down to, you know,
I
brass
say that
tacks.
all the time. Let's get down to brass tacks. That is amazing. That is
Such a
that
good
is
saying.
it's such good. Let's get down to brass tacks. That
Let's
is
get
epic. I cannot wait to see this.
Yes, let's get on brass tacks. So that's basically we're going to do the podcast, and that'll be launching soon. And so yeah, that'll be one of the things amongst books which we've talked about. But yeah, we'll see where things go.
That I'm man, I'm all smiles. Let's get on to brass tacks. Absolutely love I love the subject as well. So I go back to the whole having conversations that you're meant to have. When I was younger, one of my favorite authors was Frank Peretti. He wrote a book or a couple books called The Origin. There was one called Piercing the Darkness and This Present Darkness. And if you have not read the books by him, read them because he was a Christian author. He was or is a Christian author. And the way he would write and paint the pictures of spiritual warfare, the clashes between angels and demons, it made it seem so real. I can remember there was one part in the story where a woman's car wouldn't start, and it was simply because there was a demon sitting there with a knife or a sword through the engine. I can't remember the exact, but as a kid, as a young teenager reading these things, especially with my imaginary, my imaginative mind and my love, I'm like, I'm painting these pictures in my head. I would draw them out. So yeah, I had many clashes or many series of drawings with angels and demons clashing based off of Frank Peretti's books. Another Christian artist that I absolutely loved was Max Lucado, or artist or author and artist, and the way he could kind of paint pictures with his words. So when you talk about this podcast and you talk about elevating God and diminishing self, how does that take you into the future? What's the ultimate, what's the purpose of all of this together? Like all of this, like you talked about, we want to define our vision and purpose. When you forecast this into the future, what's that look like?
Bringing more people to him. Um, that's really the basis of all of it is when I went through this whole process with cancer and trying to figure out, okay, I was saved for a reason. What is that reason? I already started to see as I was going into remission that I was touching people around me through faith. I remember specifically telling my dad when I got diagnosed, because he was so upset. He's like, just crying. And I'm like, you don't have to worry. I'm strong enough. I know I'm strong enough. God picked me so that way my sisters wouldn't be the ones that were picked or somebody else that was less capable, mentally, physically.
Yeah.
But he picked me for a reason. And so I always go back to that. Well, what's the reason? To just bring more people to know him, to know that they have a divine purpose, that life doesn't suck, that there's all these amazing blessings that you can grasp. They're there. Every decision you make is a decision to, go down the right path or go down the wrong path. I mean, we teach that to our kids. So every single person that I meet or I talk to, and it's a chipping away slowly, right, at a rock, trying to make this sculpture. It's not overnight. Like there's people in my life that are very close to me, and they know who they are, especially if they're going to listen to this, is I would talk to them every day, just a little bit, just touch the water. Okay, God's here. God's here. Eventually, I can see he's manifesting in them. Their lives are very different. Their mentality is very different. Their spirituality is very different, and they're happier for it. They're not lost. They're not sad. They're not angry. Like now they see, okay, God does have a purpose for me. I just hadn't found it. I didn't open up myself. But the more you open yourself up, the more you can hear his voice and the more you can discern, okay, he does have a path for me. I just didn't know what it was because I was closed off. Why? Because the enemy wanted me to be closed off.
That is that is those are powerful words, extremely powerful words. And I'm very, very excited. I'm very, very excited for your future. I'm very, very excited to watch your journey, especially with this podcast. And yeah, I'm all in. Like I'm here for it. You've got, previously definitely a supporter of who you are and the work that you're doing. Um, Kat, as we kind of close this out, uh, how can individuals get a hold of you? What social media platforms are you on? Because I'm going to tell you right now, audience, you definitely need Kat, on your roster. That's a no-brainer. Um, Kat, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, as you know. I can't remember my handle. It's got the hands, so I would give to you. I'm sure you'll put it in your in your
No
links.
problem.
I'm also on Instagram. I have a personal, which is private, and then I also have my business one, which is NVS Nichols Virtual Sourcing. And I also have my website, which is NVS Sourcing. And then eventually I'll have the podcast, which is on YouTube. You can go to Brass Tacks and find it. It's just we have not put anything out there. There's also an Instagram for Brass Tacks. So it's coming, it's in the making, but yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been by far one of my favorite episodes, and the reason for that is kind of how much the conversation impacted me personally. And for those that know me that are gonna watch this, they're gonna be like, Trevor was in some deep thought during this, right? And that's 100% true. So definitely some follow-up conversations, offline that'll be definitely reaching out to have with you. But in the meantime, I wanted to say thank you very much for working with me to make this work. I truly believe that your message and the way that you deliver it, especially on this show, is going to reach several different people that need to hear the message, obviously myself included. So thank you, Kat, very much for joining me today on Way of the Warrior. It's been one hell of a ride.
Yeah, it has. Thanks for having me and keep doing what you're doing because you have a divine purpose and you're making a difference.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and little by little, I'm starting to believe that. I really, really am, and I'm excited to see your podcast take off. I will definitely be subscribing and supporting that for sure.
All right. Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up this episode of Way of the Warrior. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please make sure that you leave your comments and feedback, and as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So, all right, we're out. Have a great night.